So hopefully you will enjoy this, and I will try to enjoy it as well, because I think it's important that we enjoy things. I'm parish priest in Plymouth, which is just down the road, but it's great to be at Buckfast and to be able to, I think, celebrate with you. We're here to celebrate our faith, really, aren't we? And to learn something about it. And I want to, in this talk, hopefully engage you once more, because I know you're already engaged with the process of evangelization, but I want to engage you a little bit more in that process, and to ask you to think about how you're going to respond to it. We've talked quite a lot about it, especially in the diocese, but I want to know from you how you're going to engage with it and respond to this call and invitation to become more confident evangelizers. So if we can feel a little bit more confident at the end of not just my talk, but at the end of the weekend, then I think we will have achieved something. So hopefully that's what we're going to try and do today. It's very nice being introduced by Helena and Hannah. I've been doing chaplain for the summer camps for many years, which have been taking place at Buckfast, and they've both been on summer camps for many years, and it's fantastic to see them growing, not just growing because they are both very tall, but also growing in faith and confidence. So well done, girls. It's terrific to see you here today. It really, really inspires us all and fills us with hope. I called this rather enthusiastically, the new evangelization of the person in the pew. And I love this picture. We might imagine that actually following Jesus is quite easy. He says, follow me, and we all say, okay, yeah, fine, we'll follow you. I love in the Gospels that when Jesus calls the disciples, they go. They don't say, well, what about a pension plan? And what do I do with my family? And what happens if it doesn't work out? What will I do afterwards? What's the plan? He says, follow me, and they get up and leave everything and go. And it's a wonderfully energetic moment in the gospel, but sometimes we don't feel quite so prepared to get up and go. And so it is hard, and I think it's important to say that it's hard and to admit it, in a sense, and not be too flippant about that, but to talk about it. But anyway, we're not in a pew today, we're in festival chairs, I've called them rather enthusiastically. So if you're here because you're supposed to be somewhere else, now's the time to get up and go. And if indeed it's not interesting, get up at any point and leave. I heard about a conference in the States where there are thousands of people, and apparently there's a lot of movement, so people are coming and going all the time. Bill Herbst was talking just before and saying how polite we all are as British people. So if you want to leave, you don't have to put your hand up before you go. You can just go at any time. So the subject of my little rambling this morning is the new evangelization. And we've been talking about it for quite a long time. And indeed, the church has been talking about it for a long time. Well, forever, of course. But in terms of it being a new evangelization, for a good few years now, it's not particularly new. It might be new to you, but the church has been speaking about it and trying to engage us in a conversation and an understanding of what it is and how we engage with this subject for really quite a long time. But I put here what was wrong with the old one. That's the problem sometimes when we engage with something new. We imagine that the old has been pushed aside, that it's been shoved and said, okay, that didn't work, so let's have a look at this. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about a continuation of the work of the gospel, the spreading of the message of good news of Christ, and the continuation, but how we engage with it now, today, in this world, in this culture, as these people gathered here today. What are we doing? So in terms of it being new, it might not be that new for us. This is a hope of the church, that we will discover or rediscover the church's vocation as Mother Church, Ecclesia Mater. Begetting children for the Lord, bringing children to the Lord, bringing them to birth in a sense, which I really love. It's a lovely image, and teaching them the love which generates and nourishes her children. calling Mother Church is a wonderful image. We talk a lot about the Father, of course, but it's important that we engage as Mother as well. And I found this wonderful picture of the mantle of the Virgin. It's a very ancient symbol, an image of the Church, that the Church is obviously symbolised by the presence at the centre of Our Lady and Jesus, but that her mantle covers all people. I had a look at this today, just earlier. There are some lay people there. There's a king here. And a couple of princes. There's not a lot of kind of people like you and me there, but never mind. We are all invited to be part of this Ecclesia Mater. We are all covered in this beautiful mantle of the Church. And it's a protective mantle, but it's also very beautiful in this image that it's always opened. It's always opened up. It's not something that's closed in. The inference could be that it's going to draw everybody in and then close around. But actually, in a sense, it stays open, sheltering and protecting. Perhaps protecting more when that's necessary, but not always. It's a lovely picture, isn't it? It really is very beautiful. And you can find many instances of this. Contemporary images as well. This is very ancient. This is 12th century. So why do we evangelize? What is evangelization in the life of the Church? I'm going to read the slides. I've been asked to read the slides for the recording, so I hope that's all right. Well, it's a task and mission which the vast and profound changes of society today make all the more urgent. So it has a sense of urgency. Evangelizing is, in fact, the grace and vocation proper to the Church, her deepest identity. She exists in order to evangelize. Now, you might think that the Church exists for many things or many reasons, but actually the Church tells us that the Church exists to evangelize. Go out to all nations and proclaim the good news. The last words of Jesus to his disciples before he left to return to his Father, he said, go out and evangelize. He had trained his evangelizers, trained his men and women of faith, and then said to them, now go out and do this. And they, as the Church, went out struggling, but they went out and they did it. And so we have to accept that it's our deepest identity. The danger is, I think, that sometimes these things can be seen as the next thing we have to embrace. So it's another project, or it's another ministry, or it's another program, something like that, and we have to engage in it, and it'll go away in 5 years, and it'll be replaced by something else. It's not what the Church is telling us. The Church is telling us that, in fact, if we don't engage with this primarily first, then actually the rest of it, in a sense, is a waste of time. Many of the things that you'll see come from the documents which were used for the synod about the new evangelization, which already is nearly 2 years old. And the next synod, which we know about, is coming up. It's on family life. Again, that's not the next thing in the long list of synods or subjects for the Church to discuss. And the Church tells us that the synod on family life will be talking about family life in the context of the new evangelization. So actually everything is in the context of our deepest identity. So if we exist in order to evangelize, everything we discuss from that point on refers back to this. I want to look at some of the themes around the new evangelization. Just a couple to really strengthen our understanding a little bit. At the heart of the new evangelization is Christ. Now, we know that. We know that Christ is at the heart of the Church. Christ is the message. But we need to remind ourselves, I believe, of that. Because very often we can go off and start doing things in our own way. And we do things that we think are important. And we make the things that we think are the most important the subject of our evangelizing activity. We need to come back to Christ. And I don't know if you were at Bill's talk this morning, which was extremely rewarding. Bill talked at length about this, but it's central to all the documents around the new evangelization, and indeed it's central to everything we do. So that's the first and foremost, the most important thing that we remember, is that the new evangelization is about Christ. You'll see that's the same image as the banners here. Go and announce the gospel of the Lord. It's the gospel of the Lord that we're announcing, not our own gospel, not what we've decided is important, but the Lord himself. He's the centre of the universe. Jesus Christ is the centre of the universe and of history. I read a lovely article a few years ago now, which was about art, actually. Helena referred to my interest in art at the beginning. And the article writer was speaking about the fact that all Christian art, all Western art certainly, refers to Christianity. It really is the heart of all art that's been produced in certainly the last 600, 700 years probably. And Christ is right at the heart of that. So he's at the centre of everything. This beautiful image of the Good Shepherd is one of the earliest Greek images of Jesus, and he's depicted as the Good Shepherd. Something, again, Pope Francis is drawing us back to an understanding of the Good Shepherd. The second message about the new evangelization is that it's up to all of us. It's not just for a particular group. It's not for priests or bishops or religious or consecrated. It's for everybody. The whole church is engaged in the new evangelization. And I think that's a very important thing, again, to remind ourselves about, because we very often put it on to somebody else. Well, that's up to them. That's up to those people. That's up to the people who either have a particular interest in it or are trained in it or want to do it. But actually it's up to all of us. And if we can embrace that, if we can understand that, then we'll come to a greater understanding of what it is, but also our responsibility to be involved in it. Great picture from World Youth Day. An amazing image of the church gathered. So the church says the need for all the faithful to share in this responsibility is not merely a matter of making the apostolate more effective. It's a right and duty based on their baptismal dignity, whereby the faithful participate for their part in the threefold mission of Christ as priest, prophet and king. So we say it, and we say it at every baptism, at the anointing, but it's actually an invitation or a requirement of our baptismal dignity to be involved in this. It describes it as a right and a duty. That's lovely. No rights without responsibilities. That's one of the things I learnt. No rights without responsibilities. We don't go around demanding our rights. Well, we can, and absolutely we have every right to. But unless we accept our responsibilities, then we can't demand our rights. So it's not just to make it more effective. It's great because it does. But it's so that we can all live the life that we've been given by virtue of our baptism. I love this picture. It's a Danish picture, actually. And it reminds me of the film Babette's Feast. Have you seen Babette's Feast? It's a fantastic film of a very small, tight religious community who wouldn't know the first thing about evangelization. They were just holding on to the truth and the faith as they saw it. The new evangelization is not just to the people who are outside the church. That's what ad gentes means. Not just to the others, if you like, the Gentiles. The call to the new evangelization is certainly to this group. Absolutely, it's not excluding this group, but it's also saying this is a call to groups of faithful Catholics, faithful Christians. It's a call to people who have been evangelized, who are living a life of faith, a rich life of faith, but who also need to be evangelized. The new evangelization is for us as well. I would probably count us in that group. There's another third group, which are people who have lived this life, but have become distant from the church. So people who have known what it is to know Christ, who have known what it is to have Christ at the centre of their lives, but have drifted away from the church. And we all know people like that, people in our own communities, people in our own families, Maybe even ourselves, different points in our lives, we've drifted away, we've become disenfranchised for lots and lots of different reasons. One of the fascinating things about being a priest in a community is I get the opportunity to meet really those three groups of people. Not so much the ad gentes, it has to be said, but certainly the faithful and those who've drifted away. And I've started being quite bold nowadays. When people come to get married or to have their children baptised, and the first thing very often they say is, I haven't been to church for a while, as if I didn't know. I've never met you before, it's clear, unless you're going to Newton Abbot, it's clear you're not going to church. I now say to them, why not? Before I said, oh, well, never mind, being all polite and thinking, oh, well, let's not harp on that, I might put them off. Now I say, why not? What's the problem? What's going on? And it's incredible, the number of answers. It can be so varied. Very often it's about loss, tragedy. The church, either the church wasn't there or God certainly wasn't there. It can be simply a drifting. That's the most obvious one. Well, we used to go when my mum took us, and then we moved away, and then this happened, and then that happened, and we just didn't, kind of connect again. There's a lack of connection. But I'm quite bold now, and it's often worth engaging people in that conversation and saying, why don't you go? Not in an aggressive way, not in a way that makes them feel worse about it, but just inviting the conversation. It can be very, very rich. And rewarding. So it is about the whole world, it's about evangelizing the whole world, but seeing them in a sense distinct groups so that we respond differently, and we can be perhaps more challenging to a group of faithful Christians than we would be to a group who've never heard of Christ, and also the group that have been hurt perhaps or have moved away from the church. It means we're different in the way and the manner in which we evangelize. But it does require a missionary spirit, okay? We have to see ourselves as missionary. I'm chaplain to two schools in the parish. One is a Catholic primary, and the other is an independent co-ed school from nursery to A-levels. And in both situations, I'm not sure of the proportion of Catholics in the independent school, but in the primary school we're about 35% Catholic, and then of course we've got to take that's 35% baptised Catholic. Then we have to take a percentage of those who are practising, which let's say 10%, something like that, practice, or perhaps even 5%. So we're talking about 15 children perhaps in the school of 200. And the other day I was celebrating Mass, and the Lord be with you. The Lord be with you. It's great. Now, no, oh, sorry. Isn't that fantastic? Wow, top marks. I wasn't testing whether you knew the new translation. I say the invitation and there's no response. Now, if they even have it on the board, they even have it projected, so it can be quite challenging. And I thought, and sometimes it can feel like really hard work. Really hard work. Even at the end, parishioners will tell you, there are some here in the congregation, in the audience, and they will tell you that sometimes I say at the end, go and announce the gospel of the Lord, and they say, thanks be to God, and I say, come on, we can do better than that. Go and announce the gospel of the Lord, thanks be to God. But I realised that actually what I was doing was missionary. I was standing at the front celebrating Mass, thinking, why don't they all know what I'm doing? And I realised that actually I'm a missionary in that concept. It's missionary territory, the missionary land of some of our young people today, of our schools. I used to laugh when I trained in London, as Helena told you, and I used to laugh saying that when we're ordained for the Plymouth Diocese, they don't give us a parish or they don't send us away as a curate, they give us a white Land Rover Discovery, and we just drive around and stop and open the back, celebrate Mass, close up the doors and drive on. Woo! It's not so far from the truth in some sense, and we do have to have this missionary spirit. That's what happens to missionaries, by the way. So it's risky business. Today, as in the past, that mission is difficult and complex and demands the courage and light of the Spirit. And we have to ponder that. We have to ponder the mysterious ways of the Spirit and allow ourselves to be led by Him into all truth. So we offer ourselves to the Spirit and allow Him to lead us. That's the whole, the way we are in relation to that missionary. We're not going out banging people with this message. We're allowing the Spirit to lead us. And that's so important to remember. There are three other things which John Paul II spoke of when he was speaking to the Latin American bishops back in 1983. Okay, so this is already, how long ago is 1983? That's quite a long time, isn't it? Yeah. Is that 30 years? 30 years ago. I still think 1974 was last year, so that's, I'm getting older. So he says that this half millennium the new evangelization will only have significance if, as bishops with your priests and faithful, that's everybody, you accept it, we accept it as our commitment, a commitment not of re-evangelization, but rather of a new evangelization, new in its ardour, methods, and expression. It's the same message, but it's the way we pass on the faith. And we do it with a new ardour, with new methods, and with a new expression. So perhaps we do have to discover something of the soldiering that we're engaged in. When we're confirmed, we're made into soldiers for Christ. We sign up to be part of Christ's army, battling good against evil. But we forget that sometimes. I certainly forget that I'm a soldier for Christ. Soldiers aren't always brave and know that they're going to win. But what they do is they set out knowing that they're fighting on the right side, believing that they're fighting for truth and for justice, for integrity, for peace, and to bring about those things. So perhaps we have to discover in ourselves a new ardour. It's a lovely word, isn't it? Ardour. To be ardent comes from love, from the heart. It comes from a passion. It comes from a desire. All those things that we need to pass on the message. It's about methods. It's about how we sow those seeds, how we harvest, what we're engaged in and how we are actually doing it. And it requires us to look very deeply at what we're doing and how we're doing it. And are we doing it right? And if we're not, are we prepared to change? That's a very difficult thing. But it's certainly about the methods that we employ. It's also about getting our hands dirty, just as soldiering is about fighting. When we're engaged in passing on the message of good news, passing on the gospel, it's about getting in there and getting down and dirty. And it's also about expression. And I believe that what Pope Francis is doing is he's fulfilling those certainly in an extraordinary way. But the way he expresses it, and the way we see him doing it gives us a new way of looking at this. By his compassion, by his openness, by his willingness to come close to people, he's showing us the way that we can do it. I just have to say something about Pope Francis. Bill talked about quoting the quoting popes. I had a pint with a friend last night who was staying overnight here. He works at the seminary. And he told me about his nephew, Ryan, who is 6. This is a current story. So Ryan's 6, and last Sunday, the family had lunch together, and Ryan is at a Catholic school in North London. And they were all sitting having a lovely conversation, and Ryan suddenly pipes up. He's very happy at school, very happy and doing quite well. He pipes up, "I don't like school anymore." So his parents turn to him and say, "Why not? What's happening?" He said, "Oh, it's all Pope Francis this and Pope Francis that." He said, "I don't care what Pope Francis thinks." He's 6. And he knows about quoting the Pope. It's incredible, isn't it? It's also incredible if you image search There are millions of photographs of this man, millions. And I think that's testament to what he's doing and how he's engaging with people. He's engaging in this new expression and indeed employing new methods. He's come out of the bulletproof Pope-mobile. And he said the other day, or a couple of weeks ago, somebody said, "Why don't you use the Pope-mobile?" He said, "I'm an old man. What have I got to lose?" Isn't that fantastic? You know, it's a willingness to become engaged in a different way. There is no doubt that the effort to do this, to proclaim the gospel to the people of today who are buoyed up by hope, but at the same time oppressed by fear and distress, is a service rendered to the Christian community and also to the whole of humanity. So we're doing it for the human race. We're not just doing it for the future of the church. We're doing it for the future of the world. We're doing it for the future of everybody. People we have no idea who they are, people of other faiths. This is something, and it's a service which we're offering to everybody. But, and I've always wanted to say this, and it is a very big but. There are a few provisos which I feel in my own heart, and I hope that you do too. Okay? So I'm going to share them with you. So the church confidently proclaims, by now the subject of the new evangelization is well known in our local churches. Is it? Is it? Yes, no. Okay, so it's patchy. Let's say it's patchy, okay? Now, I think that there's a mismatch, really. The confidence of proclaiming that, but actually many of us are here. This is my pew. This has always been my pew. And we go on, don't think about moving it. My grandfather donated it to the church. If you move it, you could be in jeopardy of ruining the whole community. I won't come to church anymore. This is one of the reasons people stop coming to church, because we moved the pews. I hate to say this, but we've moved the pews in my church. And it was tough. We haven't actually put the chairs back because we're reordering our church. And it is a point of contention. But when we come down to that, we have to think of the bigger issues. Okay? We can become very issue-based. And it's what we like and what we know and what we have always known. And if we keep that the same, then everything will be fine. Okay? So I think this is the first thing when we talk about the new evangelization. I find it quite difficult to say. It's quite interesting. When we talk about the new evangelization, we need to accept this, first of all, before we start to address it. The second one is this. We have groups of people in our world and in our country who are called evangelicals. They call themselves evangelicals. Isn't that great? They can do the evangelizing and we can carry on being Catholics. Because we're not natural evangelicals. I'm not. And people say, but you stand up in front of everybody and speak every week, sometimes every day. But I get paid for that. Not very much. It's not really getting paid. It's something completely different. But we have this group of people who are called evangelicals, who are prepared to be evangelical, who will even call themselves evangelicals, and that's great. So it lets us off the hook. Okay? So we have to reimagine ourselves, if you like, as evangelizers. And that's sometimes tricky. I think there's a real problem. It says says what's new, and down here it says I still don't get what was wrong with the old one. I think there's a problem with the word new. Okay, we're very suspicious of new things. So when we go into the supermarket and we look at our soap powder and we find it and it's been repackaged and it says on a flash on the corner, new. Ooh. What do we think? It's not new, is it? No, it's just been repackaged. Yeah. So I was a graphic designer before I was ordained, and I did I'm going to say I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the job. When British Home Stores first became BHS years ago, we designed the men's toiletries range, redesigned the men's toiletries range. It was an exciting world. It really was. So we went to the buyers, the BHS buyers, and we had all the work, and we showed them three different schemes of how things could look. And I was sitting next to one of the buyers, while somebody else, the project manager, was presenting. And they said, "Wow, it looks fantastic." They were delighted, really, really delighted. And it did look really good. And he said, I heard him say to another buyer, "It's fantastic." He said, "It looks great. That shampoo looks great." And he said, "And it's rubbish, really." And I thought, what have we done? What have we done? We've sold out completely. Because what we didn't do was we didn't improve the product. All we did was we made it look better so that people would buy it. Okay? And that's the suspicion we have around the new evangelization, I think. So there's a natural thing in us that says, "Oh, hang on a minute, what's new? Is it just the same old thing? Are we being asked to do something that we're not too sure about?" And the final thing is that. Which you'll all know what it means. If it ain't broke, why are we trying something new? If it was fine as it was, then why tamper with it? So, the conversations around the new translation of the Missal. Oh, you see? Oh. What was wrong with it? It was fine. We were getting along fine. Everybody knew it. We'd had it for a long time. It was great. Why mess about with it? And that's the other problem that we have when we're asked to look at something in a new way. We say, well, it was fine before, and I was fine, so let's just leave it as it was. So before we're going to go into how we're evangelizing, or what kind of evangelizers we're going to be, we have to look at ourselves. We have to look deep into our hearts for a sense of evaluation and purification, the church says, so that we recognize any traces of fear, weariness, confusion, or a retreat into oneself. So I want to just look at those, or I want you to look at those a little, actually. Fear, weariness, and confusion. So 3 questions. In what ways does fear hinder you passing on the faith? How does weariness affect your ministry or indeed your life as a Catholic Christian? And how could your confusion be confusing others? Now, I'm not saying that any of you at all are frightened, tired, or confused. I'm sure you're all absolutely fine. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to put yourselves in the mindset of somebody who is frightened, tired, and confused, and then speak from their experience. But if indeed you are a little bit frightened, a little bit weary, and a little bit confused, I'd like you to tell the person next to you what you're frightened of, what confuses you, and what you're tired of. And if there's 3, you'll have to be really nice and generous, all right? So just talk to each other and try and look at some of those questions just for a few minutes. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I am never in any doubt that when I ask a group of Catholics to have a conversation, they will not say anything to one another. It's fantastic. Can I tell you the way I'm frightened, what I'm frightened of? I'm frightened of saying the wrong thing. Always frightened of saying the wrong thing. I'm weary of preparing children to receive Holy Communion who I know I won't see again. That makes me very tired. And I'm confused when I have to fill out papers for marriage. They can be very, very confusing. Thank you. What are the ways that you're frightened weary or confused. Let's have a few. The people that you were thinking about are those things. Anybody like to respond? Yes. Saying the wrong thing when you're asked about your faith. Sorry? And that will put people off, you see. So if we say the wrong thing, first of all, we then means that you know exactly what the right thing is to say, and then what the wrong thing is to say. That kind of idea that we've got in our heads that we know what would be wrong to say, and it will put people off. Put people off. Yes? Being expected to believe on behalf of other people.
Yeah.
Could you expand that a little?
Yeah, within my own family, I know there are family members who take comfort in the fact that I believe.
Okay.
They're not sure.
Okay.
But at least mum does. There's also even more distant relatives than that. Don't believe in anything, never go to church, get a phone call. Please, there's maybe been more within the family. Please, will you pray for it?
Yes, so you're the centre of faith in the family. No, that's right. They would perhaps claim that they don't believe anything, but nevertheless they are asking you to pray, therefore there must be something there. Okay, so being the centre of faith in the family, for instance, and everybody relying on you to do the praying for you. I don't believe anymore, but mum still does, so we'll get mum to do it. It's kind of a privileged position, isn't it? It's a very privileged, beautiful position. Yeah, but it's a lot of responsibility, yes. Does it make you tired, frightened or confused? All of them, great. Excellent, in equal measure. Anybody else?
Yes.
Yes.
My cousin who is 91 is in the Martial home at Torquay. She said to me, it's a privilege to be a Catholic. I always remember that.
That's lovely. So it's a privilege to be a Catholic from a 91-year-old. That's wonderful. I wonder if she's always felt that privilege. No, of course. She only said it the once. That's lovely. Anybody? Yes.
Aggressive responses. If it doesn't open, you feel you would like to say something, and you say something, and then you might have a very, very aggressive response to it.
Okay, and then it's dealing with that aggressive response. So saying something which leads to confrontation. That's something. It's interesting, isn't it? We're very defensive. Perhaps we've been made that way a little, particularly because of the media. So we start off on a defensive foot rather than a confident foot. It's an interesting way. It's an interesting way to evangelize from a defensive standpoint rather than a confident standpoint. And I think many of us feel like that. So we don't want to provoke an aggressive response. Very often it's the opposite. In fact, we offer, and there's no aggressive response. There's a real sense of a response which is as open as the offer that you've made. It can be, but it takes a lot of confidence. Yes, please.
What about the idea that actually Jesus, the Holy Spirit, are the evangelists? They work secretly. They do the work. I mean, we're about Christians. But, are we in danger of jumping in where something deeper is happening?
Okay, so the danger of jumping in and not allowing, I liked your term, Jesus stroke the Holy Spirit. That's nice. Jesus stroke Spirit. Father stroke Son stroke Spirit. It's a nice way to do the Trinity. I like that very much. I'll use that. Thank you. So Jesus stroke the Holy Spirit. They're the evangelizers. They're doing the work. So are we, in a sense, getting in the way? Well, of course, He is doing it through us. I have no hands on earth but yours. I have no feet on earth but yours. He uses us through our baptismal dignity, through the grace which has been offered to us. He uses us. That's how he gets his message across. If we stop, the message will die. Yes, right at the back, yeah.
I don't like being preached at, and I don't like people trying to convert me to things. And I deal a lot with Muslims, and I'm very interested in Islam, and I do workshops about it and so on. As far as I'm concerned, they're kind of believe that you know so much about Islam, why don't you become a Muslim? In my view, was it St. Francis who said, was it preach always and use words?
And sometimes use words, that's right, yes.
That's the most powerful thing to do. I think when they think, I have to be very liberal in my
Yes.
That's the most powerful.
Yes.
Even though I'm a wordy person, nevertheless, I feel that when people try to say, oh, you should become, in politics, why don't you know X party, for example? I can never say that to people.
No.
I'd
Okay.
say, can I hand you a leaflet about something in the case of voting? But in the case of beliefs, I think they're best done by how you act about it.
Yes, we very often bring evangelization down to the words that we say rather than the people that we are. That's what I meant by showing that picture of Pope Francis with the word expression. So it is about the words he uses, but I think that what's touching people, certainly what's touching people outside the church who are not reading the words, and many of us are not, well, we're reading some of the words because they are pouring at us constantly, but it's the way he is, it's the manner of his life, it's the way he expresses his faith that is affecting people. We'll just have one more. Yes?
There's a fear that it would negatively influence your relationship with people to evangelize.
Yes.
We're trainers and we go into businesses to train, and often you think, I'll remove my cross before I do this.
That's right. If they find out,
You've
yeah.
got to engage with people and create a relationship in your training, and you think, is that going to negatively influence? I have a friend on Facebook who's a real atheist and she supports us and stuff on there. And I never comment. And I think, why don't I comment? And it's because I think I'm going to negatively influence my relationship.
Yes.
But she has no worry about it.
No. Fascinating. Yes, she has no worry. You're the one that's worried. So we compartmentalize ourselves and put our faith there. When we're doing something which we feel will negatively impact on those we're engaged with, we remove our faith, or we don't mention it, or we become slightly different. It's interesting to think that the way we act would be different. But actually, in regards to the last response, actually the way we are as people, you probably don't compartmentalize. You're probably the same kind of person and you respond in the same kind of way. But that fear of they might find out, they'll find out I'm a Catholic, and then all hell break loose. Okay, so the church says in response to that, be bold. Okay, don't run away, don't be frightened, but be bold. The Christian must never forego a sense of boldness in proclaiming the gospel. We can be bold. Fantastic. Sometimes we are too reticent, I believe, too frightened. The fear, the weariness and the confusion causes a retreat into ourselves, and we forget, or we stop ourselves coming out, in a real sense coming out as Christians, saying, actually, this is who I am. This beautiful quote from Joshua, "Have I not told you, be strong and stand firm, be fearless and undaunted, for go where you may, the Lord your God is with you." We believe that. We believe that earnestly and sincerely. But when it comes to speaking about the gospel, we forget it or we put it aside. So we're called to be bold. These new circumstances in this mission of the church make us realise that this expression, new evangelization, requires finding new approaches to evangelization so as to be church in today's ever-changing social and cultural situation. So we're looking for new ways, and we need as communities to be able to respond to this renewal, which we need because of the cultural and social changes. They, that's us, ought to learn how to devise. It's nice, isn't it? Them over there. They ought to learn how to devise and implement the long process of moving to newer models while maintaining the mandate to evangelize as a reference point. That's my favourite phrase from all the documents on the new evangelization. A business as usual attitude can no longer be the case. It's not valid anymore. We can't say, but it's always been like this. This has always been my pew. I'm afraid that it simply doesn't wash because it doesn't work. This is a fantastic artist who clothes classic sculptures in contemporary garb. They're fantastic images, and I think he shows things in a radical new way. It's the same message. It's still Christ. But he has to appeal to a new culture and a new society which we find ourselves living in. Like it or not, we might not like the way society is, we might not like the way culture's going, and we can moan all we like. One of my bugbears is about how language changes, and people say, oh, but language is alive and it changes and there are new words in the dictionary all the time. I think it's really annoying that people say the thing is that da-da-da, there's a double is in every sentence. It really annoys me. And it'll be in the dictionary soon as a grammatic, you're allowed to do it. The thing is. The thing is, really annoys me. But things are changing and I'm getting older. But the business as usual attitude can no longer be the case. Okay? So when we find ourselves in that business as usual, it's got to be the same. We're reordering our church, our parish church at the moment. And my fear, in a sense, I hope it won't happen, but my fear, because it won't be good for us as a community, is if we reorder our church and we have a brand new church, a brand new space in which to worship with new things, and we go back in and we're exactly the same as we were, we just happen to be in a new space, or it's a different colour, or it's a chair rather than a pew, but we're exactly the same. That's my fear, I suppose, because actually it's an opportunity for us to think about new business, the way we do business in a new way. And I find that very stimulating and very exciting. Most of my congregation, no, actually they do. They're fantastic. Especially the people who are here today. They're really up for it. But it's a real challenge. Because it involves this. And, well, you're probably brilliant at changing, but I'm not. And John Henry Newman said, to live is to change, and to be perfect is to have changed often. It's always been like this. Implies an unwillingness to change, and that doesn't bring life. It brings stagnation very often. Because we tried that, and it didn't work, Father. Oh, yes, we did that. We did that in 1972. It didn't work. We put it back. It happens all the time. I do it all the time myself. We tried it and it didn't work, so why? Let's not try it again. So I can even feel that in my own ministry. So with the First Holy Communion children, I keep everything on my computer. So I've been in the parish for 12 years. So the first time I did First Holy Communion was in 2003. So I've got folders 2003 to 2014, and I look through them and think, have we done anything different? Have we done anything differently? Because I very often, when we start again and I have to get things, I go into last year's, get the document out, change the year and send it out. And you think, what's that about? I haven't even asked myself who the children are, where they are, what we're doing with them, who the catechist, all those things. It's hard work. But if we try and it doesn't work, let's not bother doing it anymore. None of you have ever felt that, I'm sure. Ever. Oh. It's a sheep, for goodness sake. It shouldn't have got itself in that situation. So, relying on that friend that you can remember who is frightened, weary and confused, they might be a little bit stuck as well. Could you just talk to the person next to you about how that person might be stuck and how you realise they're stuck? And if you wanted to say anything about yourself, that would be absolutely, preferable. Just for a couple of minutes. Okay, thank you very much. Maybe just a couple of comments about how we're stuck. You might like to say what you heard. Somebody's stuck here, yes, or not.
What I'm saying is I'm very happy to defend the gospel, but I sometimes find it very difficult to defend the church.
Right, so very happy to defend the gospel, but find it difficult sometimes to defend the church. Please.
I spent a long time and asked my children to help me, and one of them actually typed it out, giving a response to this thing about the family. And I put in it, I do hope we hear the response and what happens. We've heard nothing. Okay,
is that about you being stuck?
No, the church is
The church is stuck. Okay, so because we're not going to have any response, we haven't heard any responses. No. Okay, they haven't had the synod yet, so we might have to wait till after the synod for a response. But give them a bit of a chance. But yes, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. There's been a lot of talk about, or even a response to say there will be no response. Okay, yeah, something. Okay, something to unstick. Anybody else stuck? Yes. Okay. Okay. Okay, so you sent your children to a Catholic school so that they would catch the faith. I like that catch. Faith is caught, not taught. That's a kind of a nice, catchy adage. But actually, when it came to talk, because she wanted to talk about her faith to her children, and when she came to talk to it, they said, "Oh, you've rammed it down our throats. We don't want to talk about it. Thank you very much." It's great, isn't it? Thanks a lot, kids. Yeah. One more. Yes.
You have to know that you're stuck before you can get out of it.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't realise. We all have situations where we don't realise we are stuck.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, that's realising it could be the first step to freedom. It's the first step to recovery, is actually admitting that you have a problem. So when you are stuck, it's knowing that you're stuck, and that's the first opportunity to move out of being stuck. Well, that's something you can think about perhaps when you get back to your parishes, when you get back to your communities, your families, and think about how you do things and how are we stuck, and are we prepared to move, or are we prepared to change? The new evangelization requires personal and communal conversion, new methods of evangelization, and renewal of the pastoral structures to be able to move from a pastoral strategy of maintenance to a pastoral position that is truly missionary. It's the old, not division, but the old challenge between mission versus maintenance. We're involved very much in maintaining the church, but that doesn't mean we have to maintain it as it is or as it always has been. Maintenance doesn't just mean keeping everything the same, but it must have a missionary bent. It must have mission at its heart. Whatever we do must be missionary. So one thing to do is to think about everything that you do pastorally, perhaps that the community does, perhaps that the parish does, and say, what is the mission of this particular meeting? How are we, as a finance committee, as a pastoral council, as the Catholic Women's League, as the youth club, as the Apostleship of the Sea volunteers group, all those groups that meet, what is our mission? How are we missioning, or are we just kind of getting together to keep doing what we've always done? And that's how we start to think about things having a missionary strategy to them. This, the Pope said, this month, in the Gospel there's the beautiful passage about the shepherd who realises that one of his sheep is missing and he leaves the 99 to go out and find the one. But we have only one. We're missing 99. We must go and find them. He is very quotable, you see, but he knows what he's talking about. And it's so true. So we're busy with the one going, it's nice, isn't it? And yes, we'll have Mass at 11 o'clock. Yes, of course, because that's fine and that's great. And we forget about the 99. What are they doing? What are they doing where they are? How are we going out to them? Where are we? Where is the church for them? And you see, he doesn't just say it, he does it. Not Pope Francis. It doesn't really matter which pope. The question is, are we interested in transmitting the faith and bringing non-Christians to the faith? Are we really interested in that? Are we truly missionary at heart? If we look after our hearts, which most of us do, not all the time, we need to look after our missionary heart. We need to get it checked regularly. We need to have it monitored. We need to find out how we can improve it all the time so that we can be truly missionary. I want to give you a couple of... I'll go through these quite quickly, but there are a couple of processes outlined in a couple of the documents. And this is from Evangelization, the new evangelization. It's the process of evangelization, which goes through various stages. First of all, the renewal of humanity, then which leads to witness, which leads to explicit proclamation of the faith, then to inner adherence, following what we proclaim and what we witness to. Then we enter into a community, a sense of community. We build that community that we're called to build. We accept signs, the signs that God sends us of his love and his work in the world. And that leads to apostolic initiative. It is process. It's a process of conversion for all of us. And it's a process which we need to enter into. We can't kind of dip in and dip out or choose one and stay there. It is a process that we go through. And it doesn't just end in apostolic initiative. It then goes back to the renewal of humanity. So it's a constantly evolving and a vibrant exchange. And the second one is from Redemptoris Missio. And it describes it as the complex reality of evangelization. It's very similar, but I just thought these were interesting in terms of being quite systematic about outlining the stages of the process. So witness first, then proclamation, conversion and baptism leading to discipleship, so that leads to us following Christ. Then we form local churches and communities because we gather together, those of us who've been baptized. We incarnate the gospel in the culture in which we find ourselves in. Then we talk to the culture and those who are not yet part of the community or are outside for whatever reason. That promotes promotes development and liberation and leads to love for the poor. And then back to witness and proclamation and so on. This wonderful dynamic cyclical motion. I felt like, that there was a Jennifer Aniston hair commercial years ago, and she says it halfway through. Now listen, here comes the science. There's a kind of bit of science, bit of church science. Now, I'm going to take you through just a few quotes from the quotable Pope. This comes from a very, very short section in the Joy of the Gospel. Just a few paragraphs, but I think there's something very, very profound in it. And he calls it accompaniment, spiritual accompaniment, in the service of mission. We have to look at people. We have to look out from where we are, not within. We have to have eyes that gaze out on the world, and particularly at others. This occurred at a mass that the Pope was, not at a mass, but at a liturgy in Rome. And there were children on the sanctuary in St. Peter's, and this little boy approached the Pope, and there was this lovely interaction between the two of them. It was very, very beautiful. He ended up standing right next to the Pope, hugging him. As the Pope was standing at the podium speaking, he came and spoke. When we gaze at them, we don't gaze at them critically or say, you're doing that wrong, or you shouldn't be here, or that's not right. We see in them their life of grace and the mystery of the other. That changes the way we approach them. It changes us as well, profoundly, because we understand more of the life of our life of grace, which is a mystery too. And when we listen, we then start to communicate. And the lovely thing is that we learn. And we find that others can point the way. Others can teach us. Others can lead us in ways that surprise us and make us filled with joy as well. It's fine to talk about an openness of heart. To show it is something else. You don't have to use the words. Showing it is more powerful. On the lips of the catechist, and not just the catechist, but all the faithful, the first proclamation must ring out over and over. Jesus Christ loves you. He gave his life to save you, and now he's living at your side every day to enlighten, strengthen, and free you. And we make in our world, we make present the fragrance of Christ's closeness and his personal gaze. This is Christ stroke Spirit gazing on his beloved people, on his beloved children, and embracing them and coming close to them with an openness of heart. And we're constantly ready to bring this love to others we meet. And it happens unexpectedly and in any place. We very often perhaps never set out to evangelize, to spread the message. It happens unexpectedly, anywhere we are. I don't even know if this little boy knows who this man is. But he knows something's happening. He recognizes something, and that's very beautiful and unexpected. Our personal experience of being accompanied and assisted and of openness to those who accompany us will teach us to be patient and compassionate with others and to find the right way to gain their trust. You see, to gain their trust, their openness and their readiness to grow. Before we march in evangelizing, we get to know the other, and then we can begin to find the right moment. The church will have to initiate everyone, priests, religious and laity. Initiate, not teach again, but initiate into this art of accompaniment, which teaches us to remove our sandals before the sacred ground of the other, about honouring the other. In their presence. This was taken in Jerusalem very recently. It's a very powerful picture. It really is. And it's all about hats. It's all about what you wear. Isn't that fantastic? So if we're going to accompany, we need to learn to look. We need to learn to listen. We need to learn. And then we need to learn how to proclaim. Have we got 2 minutes? Can you bear 2 more minutes? There's a priest in the States, in Chicago, called Robert Barron. Many of you probably know. He runs a website called Word on Fire. He wrote about what a priest of the new evangelization should be. So in the spirit of the common priesthood of all the baptized, this is how we are called to be, what we are called to be. It's not about ideas or doctrine. He's not making this up. He's referring to the teaching of the church. It's not about passing on doctrine. It's about drawing people into a closer relationship. Ourselves first, and then others. A friend. Aristotle says that people only really listen to an excited speaker. We need to get a little bit excited about the gospel. We need to get excited about it first for ourselves so that we can then pass it on with some ardour. And let's call it ardour. It's great, isn't it? Ardour and ardour. We need to know the story of Israel. We need to know the continuity of the Old Testament, of God's work. We need to know who Christ is, why he came, what he did, and what his continuing saving work is all about for us. The Bible in one hand, the newspaper in the other. A person who understands the culture. We don't remove ourselves from where we are. We immerse ourselves in the culture in which we find ourselves so that we can then begin to evangelize it. We need a missionary heart. The fact that 75% of Catholics don't attend Mass should bother us. It really should bother us. We shouldn't be comfortable with that or make excuses for it. It should bother us. And we have a rich tradition which we are called to reverence. We know Christ because we find him, not just in the scriptures, but through theology, philosophy, and the arts. He's present in our world, and there are many ways that we can find him. We know how to use what we have. We learn. We don't say, oh, I don't know anything about that stuff. We say, how can I learn? How can I embrace it? How can I find more about it so that I can use it to spread the message and to pass on the faith? That's all, folks. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.